All right, looks like everybody is ready and good to go. So, all right, well, welcome to your mini yoga flow. We're going to be focusing mainly on decompressing through the spine, specifically the lumbar region, so the area between your pelvis and your rib cage. You are going to want a set of blocks. I invite you to set those towards the top of your mat. But we're actually going to start laying on our backs supine with the knees bent. So, however you would like to get there, go ahead and come onto your back. Knees are going to be bent, feet flat onto the floor. Your arms can be however is comfortable. From here, just find this very slow windshield wipering of the legs. So keeping the feet hip distance, let both knees fall over towards the right. Notice how that feels through the lumbar region. Bring the knees back up through center and then slowly let them fall over towards the left. So all we're going to do is alternate this side to side, really slowly and intentionally trying to release pressure through the low back or pain and really start to spark some mobility and some hydration of the thoracolumbar fascia. If you feel comfortable doing so, maybe closing the eyes or just softening the gaze and noticing how this movement, this gentle side-to-side movement feels in your low back. Maybe even bringing some awareness to your breath. Move really slowly, really gently. And we'll take just a couple more rounds side to side here. And then the next time your knees come back up to center, we're going to let everything roll off towards the right. So it's like you're coming through fetal position. And then use your hand to press yourself up and come into a seated posture with the knees bent, feet flat on the floor. So we're going to find a little bit of engagement here. Bring the hands behind the knees. And then I'm going to invite you to lean back until you feel the bottom of your sacrum, so this bony region underneath your low back, hits the floor. Now press your right hand into your right knee and push your right knee into your right hand, and then find a twist open towards the left. Bring your left hand to left knee, push hand into knee, knee into hand, and find a twist over to the right. Bring it back through center. As you inhale, reach up, push your belly button towards your thighs so you're coming into spinal extension. And then we're going to come back to flexion. So bring the hands behind the knees, roll down. This time come maybe a little bit deeper than the last one. So maybe the sacrum and a little bit more of the low back is on the floor. Right hand, right knee, knee to hand, find your twist. Bring it back through center, left to left, find your twist. Back through center, inhale up to spinal extension. Now we're going to go one more. If that last one felt really challenging, maybe coming back to where you just were, or maybe coming down a little lower again. Push knee into hand, hand into knee. Find your twist. Other side. And then back through center, spinal extension. However you want to get into tabletop, if it's helpful, you can cross the knees and roll over, or just flip it over, but however you would like to get into your tabletop position. And we're going to come into cat-cow, but we're really going to focus on segmenting through the spines like a spinal roll. So come into your neutral spine first, so it feels like you have a flat back. And we're going to start from the tailbone. So from the tailbone, start to pull your tailbone up towards the sky so you feel the front of your pelvis dropping towards the floor. Keep going until you feel it more in the mid-back, upper back, and then eventually extend through the cervical spine as you lift your chin. We're going to orient that again from the tailbone, this time tucking it slightly under, so let your tailbone initiate the movement through the low back, eventually the mid-back, upper back, eventually the cervical spine, and tucking the chin in. Let's do that a couple more times. Still letting all of the movement originate from the tailbone. So once the chin is tucked, keep that there. Let the tailbone do the work. Low back, mid-back, upper back, neck, and then eventually the chin lifts. And then reverse that, tuck the tailbone. And go one more at your own pace and really notice how it feels to segment or move your vertebra Just one little bit at a time. And then the next time you start to come through the cow variation where you let your belly drop, let's pause in a neutral spine. Walk both hands over towards the right front edge of your mat. And then take some cat-cows here with that left arm a little bit more reaching than the right. And notice how that feels through the left lower quadrant of your back. And again, it might be helpful to match your breath with your movement and notice which breath you take for each movement. Maybe it's an exhale as you round, or it's the opposite. And then slowly find that neutral spine again. We're going to just walk right through center and over towards the left, reaching your right arm a little bit more than the left. And then come into this side reaching cat-cow again. This time noticing how it feels in the lower right quadrant of your back. And notice how it feels to really let the hips and the shoulders find these movements rather than it just being about the mid-back or the thoracic spine. And then slowly come back through center. We're going to step the right foot to the outside of the right hand, so you're kind of setting yourself up like a low lunge. When you're ready, go ahead and lift the upper body and place the hands on your hips. Now think about your hips and your shoulder coming together, and notice how that feels through the front of your left leg and into your left hip. And then move your shoulders and your hips away or in opposition from each other. And notice how it feels to come into that spinal extension. So let's explore that a little bit more. Bring your hips and your shoulders together. Bring your hips and shoulders apart. Let's do that one more time. Hips and shoulders together. Hips and shoulders apart. Now go ahead and one more time, bring your hips and shoulders together. Now notice how keeping the hips and the shoulders together, specifically the hips, really activates this whole left side. See if you can't keep your hips almost as if they're looking up towards your shoulders as you lift your chest and arms. Now if you lose any of that sensed activation through that left side, go ahead and come back down, re-bring the hip in, and then join me. But keeping that really active, we're just going to explore some proprioception of floating your right leg. Keep that hip looking up towards the shoulder, and then sweep your right leg back to meet your left. We're going to bring the right hand towards the right hip and look back towards your right foot as your left arm crosses the body and extends over into this revolved camel. Slowly unravel, come back to your tabletop position. So we'll do that same thing on the left side. Step your left foot to the outside of your left hand. And then slowly rise up, hands to hips. So again, just thinking about hips and shoulders, the back will move once we move them. Bring your hips and shoulders towards each other. Feel how that lengthens or stretches through the front thigh and hip. Move the hips and shoulders away from each other. Move the hips and shoulders towards each other. And away from each other. One more here. Now keep the hip almost as if it's looking up towards the shoulder as you lift the chest and arms up. Notice how that right leg is really active, and then a little bit of proprioception, float your left leg from the floor. Ooh, it's a little trickier on this side. And then slowly sweep that left leg back to meet the right. Bring your left hand to your left sacrum. Look back towards the left foot as you reach your right arm overhead. And then slowly release, come back through tabletop. Tuck your toes under, start to lift yourself up into downward facing dog. Now we're just going to have those hips moving again, so activating through that lumbar region. So as you come up onto your tippy toes, lift your heels. Try to bring your shoulders as if they're looking, or sorry, your hips as if they're looking at your shoulders. Lower your heels back down and move your frontal hip points as if they're looking away from the shoulders. As you lift your heels, have the hips looking towards the shoulders. And as you lower the heels, have them look away. So keep going here. It's like you're doing a cat-cowing of your lumbar spine. So as you lift the heels, you're rounding that low back. And as you lower the heels, you're extending it. And we're going to add on just a little bit of a spinal roll here. So the next time your heels are lifted and you're in that more rounded low back, keep spiraling until you come forward into your high plank. From here, we're going to soften the knees. You're going to come into that extension by lifting the hips and push yourself back to downward facing dog. Let's do that a couple more times. Lift the heels, draw the hips forward, round the rest of the spine, the lumbar initiating the movement to plank. Soften the knees, let the hips sit back and up. Spinal extension. Rounding spinal flexion. Softening the knees, spinal extension. On this next one, as you lift the heels, soften the knees, and step to the top of your mat. Once you're standing at the top of your mat, maybe hooking the hands into your opposite elbows, and let your upper body be really heavy here, like an anchor weighing you down, and soften your knees. And we're just going to bounce basically through this upper body. So it's kind of like you're almost slapping your belly against your thighs. Just this little bounce of creating and letting go of tension through the low back. And maybe it makes sense for you to stay center. Maybe you like to kind of take this over towards the left, and then back through center, and then over towards the right. But just really focusing on decompressing through this lumbar region. And slowly come back through center and let your arms release towards the floor, really heavy and weighted. Slowly reach your arms over towards the left, so it's more like you're twisting towards the left. Be really heavy through your heels, soften through the knees, and we're slowly going to roll up the left side of our body, stacking one vertebra on top of the next as you slowly roll up, keeping the head heavy, the feet heavy. Head, last thing to come up. Gently come through center, and then we're just going to do that same thing, tuck the chin to the chest, and slowly roll down the right side. So really moving slowly so you can notice how this feels through each little segment of vertebra. Once you've made it to the floor, again, stay really heavy, ground through the heels, roll up through the right side. And once you've made it up through center, we're going to tuck the chin to the chest and roll down through center. Again, really moving slowly and segmentally. Now here's where you might want to have your blocks. So if you have them at the top of your mat, go ahead and just place them underneath your hands. We're going to step the left leg back and stay kind of lifted in this high lunge. So the hands on the blocks are just bringing the earth to meet us rather than having to have our hands down on the floor. But we're going to do that same thing we did in our down dog, where we're tucking and rounding the lumbar region of our back and then extending. But it might be helpful to think about just the hips, like looking towards the upper front body, and then the hips pulling away. Now, in order to achieve the rounding, you may have to soften your back left knee a little bit and then extend it or straighten it as you come into your spinal extension. But then the next time you have that bent, slowly roll it all the way up. And then step the feet together. This time we'll step the right foot back and come back to that lumbar again. Rounding the lumbar region and then extending the lumbar region. And take 1 or 2 more here. And this time, instead of standing up here, we're going to step the back foot to meet the front foot. Let your body be really heavy, arms really heavy towards the floor, ground through your heels, soften through the knees, roll it up really slow, stacking your vertebra. And we'll finish with just a little side bending motion. So as you inhale, reach the arms overhead, hook your thumbs, and then imagine you're trying to pull your thumbs apart. Take a little side bend over towards the right, and then reach towards that right corner of the front of your space. So it's like you're closing your chest off. Feel that nice gentle stretch running down the left back. Inhale, open the chest back up, come back through center. Keep pulling the thumbs apart, side bend over towards the left, and then reach towards that left corner and feel that grounding of the right foot and that stretch through the right side of your back. Open it back up, come through center, exhale, release. Thank you so much for joining me for this mini flow. I hope your low back feels refreshed and rejuvenated. And until next time, be well.